Hello, everybody. My name is Alex Davey. I am the designer of Star Wars Legion, and I use he/him pronouns.
My name is Brooks Flugar-Levitt. I'm a developer on Star Wars ARMADA and Star Wars XWING. I use they/them pronouns.
I know you're all here to hear some exciting new announcements, so we're just going to jump right in. It was a little over a year ago that Legion was released, and it has been a really amazing year for the game. And I think a lot of that is down to the community, the excitement that everybody brings to the hobby, and it is blowing my mind how many people are here at Adepticon playing the game, super excited for new units. And I'm really excited for 2019. It's going to be a huge year for the game, and the main reason for that is that we are jumping into the Clone Wars. So I'm really excited to announce a brand new core set. This is, I think, even better than the original core set. It has incredibly beautiful miniatures. It's another standalone entry point to the game, so if you're new to the game and you're more interested in Separatists or Republic, you can jump right in with this core set. It includes 2 new factions, obviously, which is going to help the diversity of the game immensely. And it has 39 minis in this box. The droid units, the B1 battle droids, are 9 minis apiece, because we really wanted to get across that horde effect, that swarm of droids. And the Republic has a lot of really interesting options as well. So one of the big things that I think is so important about this new core set is it's bringing 2 new factions into the game. And that's just the start of things for Legion. We're hoping to introduce even more factions down the road. But what this is going to mean is that your games are going to be a little more diverse. Your strategies that you come up with are going to have to be a little bit more flexible. And I really think it's going to be a great way to bring some younger players into the game who grew up in the Clone Wars era of Star Wars. So we're super psyched about that. And of course, we're going to be supporting the core set with the usual Trooper expansion packs. Everything that comes in the core set will have its own expansion pack, with the exception of Obi-Wan and General Grievous. This is the same thing that you saw in the original core set. It's going to be a way for you to quickly supplement your releases so you can hit the ground running with this new faction and play a full army. And this is the other thing I'm really excited to announce. We are coming out with an upgrade card pack, so that if you want to get any of the upgrade cards that are not tied to a specific faction, and you don't want to purchase more miniatures, let's say you're a new player just getting into the game with the Clone Wars core set, you can quickly get all of the Rebel and Imperial upgrades you might want to use. Or you're an existing player and you want to get some of the upgrade cards that are included in the new core set, this product is also for you. This is just a way for us to increase player options without straining their pocketbooks. So I'm pleased with this. We'll do numerous upgrade packs in years to come. The miniatures. I am happy to say I think these really are the best miniatures we've ever done for this game. And some of the best miniatures we've ever done as a company. You can see there's a wealth of really interesting poses and customizability options. Obi-Wan is a really cool sculpt. And that Bark speeder, you can't tell from the still image, but it can be assembled with or without the sidecar. And the sidecar actually rotates 180 degrees, just like it does in the show. So it's a fully mobile aspect, and that's reflected in its ability to fire out of the rear arc. And you get a lot of droids. So look at all those droids. And this is super exciting to me because this is our move into a different type of plastic and a different type of miniature production. All of these will be in hard plastic on frames. So you're going to get a crisper level of detail. You're going to get a harder plastic that's going to allow you to assemble and paint those very spindly little B1 battle droids with more precision. And you're going to get a higher amount of detail. General Grievous also comes with a staggering number of pose options. He can be posed with his arms joined together, his arms split into 4, he's got a pistol in one of his arms, and all of them are rotating ball socket joints. So there's like a million ways you can pose Grievous, which is very exciting. Oh yeah, he's got a cape too, an option. Because you gotta look swag. These really are beautiful models. And as I was saying, frames. The reason to move towards this type of miniature production is it really is just going to allow us to produce a better quality miniature. We are very cognizant of the fact that we don't want to make this game inaccessible, so we are doing everything that we can to make these easy to assemble while still allowing for a ton of versatility and customization. So I'm super excited about that. New plastic, better sculpts. I think that the game is just going to continue to look better and better with each new wave. And here we have a full-on battle on Geonosis. We've got Obi-Wan leading the clones. Unfortunately, it looks like Grievous has the high ground here. So I don't know about Obi-Wan's chances. Oh, here we go. He sorted it out. Grievous is in trouble now. But as you can see, they paint up really nicely. I think we've done, you can see a different pose option for Grievous there with the cape and the two lightsabers. All the battle droids also very posable, very flexible. And the droidicas that come in the core set, you get them in standing mode and also in wheel mode. So you actually get 4 miniatures for 1 unit. And the wheel mode has a gameplay effect. So you can actually swap your models out when they're in either wheel or standing mode. Well, there it is. All of that for only $10 more than the current core set. I think that's a pretty great price point, and I think that's going to draw a lot of players to the game. Phase 1 clone troopers, same MSRP as existing core troopers. Ditto the battle droids. Again, same MSRP, even though you get 9 miniatures in the package. And these units will be able to be run from between 6 and 8 miniatures rather than the 4 to 6 for traditional units. And of course, the upgrade card pack available soon. Q3, coming soon. I think that's pretty much a wrap for Legion. So I'm going to hand the presentation over to my colleague here. We'll get to your questions.
All right. Go ahead. So also last year, we announced and then released the 2nd edition of Star Wars X-WING.
Ow!
So our initial release wave consisted of a number of iconic ships from the original trilogy era and some ships from the movies, like Millennium One and Falcon. Also conversion kits to help make sure existing players could update their collections to 2nd edition quickly and easily. Following that, Wave 2 focused on the sequel era factions, the Resistance and First Order, with conversion kits for them, and a number of existing ships and new ships, both from that era and from other eras. We have a Minefield Tide from Rebels. Wave 3 introduced the Clone Wars. These products are all available now. We have faction boxes for both the Republic and the Separatists. This is a new way we've come up with to make getting into a faction very easy once you have the core set, because these expansions come with several ships and a number of upgrade cards and pilot cards for the faction, as well as we have a number of ships with updated paint schemes, re-sculpted miniatures for all of these factions. And now that we have released all 3 of the first waves of X-WING, we've gotten ships and factions from every era of Star Wars into the game. Importantly, because they all use the same mechanics, you can play any of these factions with or against each other at your tabletop, at home, at tournaments, etc. So we really are covering everything visible about Star Wars, everything that is going forward as well. We have a lot of options, a lot of different ways for you to play the game the way you want to. If you and your friends want to focus on one era or another, you're perfectly capable of doing that and having a great gameplay experience. So now, recently announced, we have the 4th wave of X-WING, which is the first that isn't introducing a whole new faction. So we're able to go back and re-releasing more ships from the first edition of the game. We are updating their sculpts whenever possible. So the Millennium Falcon is going to have an updated sculpt to reflect some of the changes that were made in The Force Awakens and to land as Millennium Falcon and tie all three miniatures together. We also have a resculpted B-Wing with movable strike foils, as well as a rotating cockpit and a rotating stand mount. So you'll be able to rotate the whole miniature all the way around. We have a resized TIE silencer to better match the depiction in the movie, and a number of new ships that I'll be covering on the following pages. So first of all, the Naboo Starfighter, which was one of the first ships I saw on screen for Star Wars, because The Phantom Menace was my introduction to the setting. We have an absolutely beautiful, stunning, sleek ship miniature, a number of ship cards with iconic pilots. The emphasis for this product was really on the maneuvering in the game, on flying fast, flying very precisely. So I've come up with some very interesting pilot abilities that will explore some new design space. Spinning is always a good trick, by the way. And of course, we have a number of new upgrade cards and assorted tokens and components as well. For the Separatists, we have the Hyena-class droid bomber from the Clone Wars TV show. It's a beefer, more intimidating version of the Vulture droid. It carries a lot of ordnance, so this expansion is really focused on new missiles, new torpedoes, new bombs, and various other effects that go with them, as well as exploring more of what purpose-built droid ships and how they will activate and act in X-Wing, as opposed to ships that have a pilot. And finally, we have the Resistance transport from The Last Jedi. Importantly, this is actually a modular miniature. The cockpit pod can be detached and flown separately, so you are getting two ships in this game, the Resistance transport and the Resistance transport pod. Both of them are going to focus heavily on teamwork, on having a number of pilots and iconic crew options from the new movies you can see there, so that the rest of your team works together to support them. But as the Resistance transport is built on the frame of an old B-Wing, you can still load that with some pretty powerful weaponry if you want to. And finally, we have a limited edition Vulture droid fighter with a copper-colored metallic paint scheme. It's available at our booth the rest of the week. Make sure to get there early so you can get tickets. And then once you have a ticket, it will reserve it. I'm sure you all want to know. You'll have to wait a little bit longer. So stay tuned for Celebration next month. And now I get to talk about Star Wars ARMADA, which is the other game I work on. No clicks of yacht. So, the Superstar Destroyer was announced last year at Gen Con and has been some time coming. Unfortunately, we announced a couple days ago that it will be delayed further. We are expected to, there's one more thing on here. We are expected to release in Q3 of 2019. We appreciate the enthusiasm and the patience of all the fans of ARMADA. This is coming. Hopefully it will be worth it to you. It will certainly be worth it to me. I started playtesting on this years ago, and now we got to develop it for the game, and it's finally coming out, so I'm really looking forward to it.
It's literally been years for us. We started working on this back in Wave 2. So if you think you've been waiting for a long time for this to come out, you got nothing on us. I promise it's worth the wait. It's a stunning miniature. I've gotten to hold it in my hands.
Very carefully.
Very carefully, yes. Well, mostly. But yeah, it's coming, just a little bit longer.
So also, a couple of months ago, we released the Sector Fleet rules for large point games and multiplayer games of ARMADA. This is something that fans had done a lot using the rules from the All-Out Offensive, or just with rules at home. And we've actually run team events at a number of conventions and are at our own worlds. But now we've made those rules, updated them a little bit, made them available online. So this is a great way to play a big game of Armada. If you have a whole afternoon or weekend that you want to play as big as you want using the standard objectives. The Superstar Destroyer includes 2 more expensive ship variants, points-wise, that aren't usable in the standard game. This is the perfect place to use those, so you can have a more thematic, more powerful, more dangerous vessel in your games. And now, I'm proud to announce a new expansion for Star Wars Armada. This is the Rebellion in the Rim campaign expansion. So this is a collaboration between our department and the RPG department. We've been working on this for several months now. It's suitable either for standard sized fleets or for escalation play if you want to play with a lower point value. If you want to invite new players, new communities to join in. It's a great way to link games together. It has rules for compact scenarios on the 3x3 play area if you're limited on space, but almost all of the content can also be played at full size. So one of the features that we are adding that was not in the Corellian Conflict expansion is the ability to create a custom commander. Now this is only for campaign play, but you'll be able to create and train over the course of the campaign a commander with a variety of different special abilities to react to how you want to tell your story in this ongoing galactic civil war. We've got a number of iconic planets from across the Star Wars galaxy, divided into regions, each with strategic benefits and strategic drawbacks. So you will have some map consideration to do, but primarily the whole campaign is built to generate games for you to play on the tabletop. So there are a number of new campaign objectives with a more narrative bent than normal standard objectives are, and these will be triggered by various effects throughout the course of the campaign. The campaign expansion also contains a number of contents for standard play. We have new objectives and obstacles, including creatures that will be moving around the table and causing problems for you wherever you are. We also have new upgrades and new unique squadrons for the squadron miniatures from the Rogues and Villains expansion pack. So new pilots for each of those. A number of upgrades available to fleets on both sides, doing a whole number of different things, a number of new characters as well. So Rebellion in the Rim is going to be available for $29.95 in Q3.
All right, we're just going to open up the floor to questions now. I'm sure you've got a lot of them. You sir.
The upgrade packs that you're doing for Legion, are you going to bring those over to XWING and Armada as well?
Probably yes. That's something we want to see in all of our games.
Grievous is on a standard size base.
Yep. He's kind of like crammed on there. But yeah, normal trooper base is
A lot more presence.
In the upgrade packs, is it going to be one copy of each card, or some of them going to have more than one?
I believe it's a variety. It depends on the upgrade. We tried to basically give players multiple copies when we felt like they would want multiple copies. I don't believe there's any one-offs. Every card in there is at least a couple. Some of them are like 4 or 6 or whatever, depending on how many we think players are going to want.
Is there any chance that the Armada will move into the Clone Wars?
So we can't comment on our specific plans, but we are still developing new ships for the game. I'll say it again, people in the back. We are still developing ships for Star Wars Armada.
Yes.
We just are not quite ready to tell you what they will be.
Are the trooper expansions for Legion going to have exclusive cards that aren't in the core set? Like the original ones that grapple hooks and those weren't in the core set?
I believe that they do, but those cards are also available in the upgrade pack.
So right now, light side force powers are restricted to rebels, and dark side are restricted to Imperials. Does that expand or change in any way in the Clone Wars set?
Yes, it does. That's a good question. The Separatists will have access to dark side force powers, and the Republic will have access to existing light side force powers. Yep.
New ones?
Oh yeah. New everything. There's a lot of fun stuff in that set.
Epic 2.0. Anything?
It's coming and it's awesome. That's all I can say. We actually just finished development on it, so it should hopefully come out soon.
Soon.
I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm not going to say anything else. But stay tuned. We worked really hard on it. Max did an amazing job.
And I don't have to buy new ones?
You do not have to buy new ships.
Yeah, great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Are there any plans to go back and re-release the existing core Legion stuff with the new plastic?
Yes, that's a great question. Eventually, we want to get the entire line on frames rather than on the soft plastic. So I can't say when that will happen, but it is in the works. Sculpting is currently really, really busy making Clone Wars stuff. But I will say this. The Republic stuff in the new core set is still in the soft plastic, and the Separatist stuff is in hard plastic. But a few waves after the new core set, everything will be on frames that is released, and then we will retroactively re-release more detailed, more posable kits for existing factions.
So before you answer any other questions, I just want to say that although we write the rules for these games, it's our sculpting department who continually improves their abilities to make these miniatures for Legion and for X-WING and for Armada. And they have to get all the credit for the new movable strike foils on the X-Wings and the B-Wings, for the vastly improved Legion sculpt. Not that the originals were bad, just that they're continually getting better. It's really impressive.
Yeah, they're knocking it out of the park, and they're getting better with every wave we do, so that's
And
exciting.
they're not stopping anytime soon.
Any chance Legion's gonna go to an app and/or see a points revisit?
I can't say for sure whether we'll do an app or not, but I can tell you that a points revisit of some sort is something that I would like to do. So I imagine that will happen sooner or later. I can't say what form it will take, but I am aware that there are certain units that are not as well balanced as they should be. And I can say that I pushed really hard for the X-WING app and for variable points, so it's something that I want to do and will probably happen at some point.
With the Clone Wars, there was no glam shot of like Droidicas or the Bark Speeder in its own, so are they not coming out separately outside of the...
They are. They are coming out a little bit after the initial release.
Can I follow up?
Yeah.
Will they have slightly different scopes as opposed to what was in the core set, like the ATRT and the speeder bikes did?
I don't believe that they do actually. I don't. There may be a unique rider for the Bark Speeder, but I am not 100% on that.
Will you focus on Clone Wars then for a few months and leave aside the Empire and Rebellion?
We are not going to completely drop the Empire and the Rebellion, but releases will slow for them. So it'll be like something like 80% Clone Wars, 20% Rebel and Imperials, just in that catch-up period, and then it'll move towards a more equal release rate. But we have developed a ton of stuff for everybody, so there's plenty in the pipeline for every player.
Can you speak to the playstyle of the two new Legion factions, just kind of in general how they're going to feel on the table?
Yeah, that is a great question. We aimed for a rough kind of symmetry with the Imperials and the Rebels. They are pretty comparable as factions, even though one is a little more defensive, one is a little more focused on tricks and offense and that sort of thing. But the Clone Wars gives us an opportunity to really deviate from the sort of basic template. So you have two ends of the spectrum with Republic and Separatists. The Separatists are your first real full Horde army. I'll spoil one thing here, since I'm feeling cheeky. A unit of 6 battle droids is 36 points. And they are terrible. But that's fitting, and the fact that you can, they're very effective in numbers, and you have to kind of keep them coordinated. They're very reliant on getting order tokens to be at all effective. So they're very much a faction where if you've done everything right, if everything is moving smoothly, you have a very powerful force. But as soon as your lines get disrupted, as soon as things start to go wrong, they can kind of break down a little bit. But you'll be able to put more models on the table than anybody else. The Republic, simply put, are super elite. You have super elite commanders. They have the best core troops in the game. They're highly trained, bred for battle, and led by Jedi. So you're not going to see a lot of models on the table, but every single one of them is going to pack a real mean punch.
Against the wall in the back.
Why in every game that she's released does Sabine either require ARMADA or destroy the meta?
Well, I think that remains to be seen for Legion. She is nasty, but she is beatable at least in my experience. So hopefully we won't have to do much to her.
And one thing more generally is...
Melee intentional.
What's that?
Is her being able to beat Vader in melee intentional, where you have to errata,
Are you referring to Impervious?
Yeah.
That is not going to be an errata. We are well aware of that. That's a planned rules reference update when she comes out. Being Impervious does not make you immune to Pierce or give you any benefits against Pierce weapons. It does. It's not better than. What I'm saying is they don't stack. Her having the Darksaber, that replaces Impervious. So don't fret on that level.
And just more generally, when the additional expansion characters come out, whether for Legion or for X-WING or for Armada, those are chances for us to explore new mechanics, which are always a little more interesting to integrate. And Sabine is certainly a character who deserves to have interesting mechanics.
Yeah, she's strong. We'll see how strong she is.
So Vader, Luke, all your named characters have that iconic dot in front of them that means that they're unique characters. Does that mean that we're going to see potentially like Return of the Jedi Luke, where he might have some unique mechanics and things of that nature?
Yeah, we've left the door open for that with subtitles. Every commander, every operative has a subtitle. Like the Luke that you get in the core set is Hero of the Rebellion. So any sort of future Luke that we made could be Son of Skywalker or Jedi Knight or whatever. So yeah, there's definitely the potential to see different versions of iconic characters, especially since they go through so many changes over the course of the trilogy. So yeah, I would say that at some point a Jedi Luke is very possible.
Will the Clone Wars have the new static tokens?
Yes, that's a great question. We are introducing a new token. We're introducing something called a surge token. It does what it sounds like it does. It lets you convert one surge into either a hit or a block. And that is something that really, the whole new factions were really designed around this idea, this mechanic. There's a lot of ways that you can make your battle droids actually effective by issuing them orders and surge tokens and that sort of thing. So yeah, there's some new mechanics and some interesting new stuff at play.
Against the wall?
Two-part question. Any thoughts on points rebalancing or an app for Armada? And the other part is, can you tell us any more about the campaign and the different level fleets and...
So first of all, much like for Legion, having access to some sort of points rebalancing would certainly be useful to us. Working on both Armada and X-WING, it's much easier to be able to develop something that's interesting first and not have to worry as much about the balancing because I know it can be adjusted later. So it's certainly options we're considering, but I don't have anything further to announce at this time. And your question about the campaign was?
Just like, there are different point levels, are there ship restrictions, or anything else more you can tell us about the campaign?
So I'll leave the specific details to marketing to announce later, but the campaign is written for 200-point fleets, but there are a number of sidebars throughout the book that explain how to use it at larger scales. So at 400, at larger if you wanted. The upgrade, adding ships and upgrades to your fleet is going to work very differently. We tried to remove a lot of the accounting you had to do in the Corellian conflict, So instead of tracking a numerical value of resources and adding to that and subtracting to that every turn, the addition of new upgrades and occasionally new units will just be, they happen at a certain time, and you have a certain budget to spend, but you don't track what's left of it. So focusing more on the narrative and focusing more on getting you to the table to play an interesting game and less on the resource management.
Thank you.
Do you guys plan to release more of the squadron packs for X-WING for the current or older factions, however you want to refer to them, like Imperials or Rebels, to the new?
It's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, unfortunately we can't talk about that, but I can say that those have been very popular and very successful, and we tend to listen to things that are popular and successful.
You guys mentioned the possibility of getting card packs for X-WING. Would it be something similar to that, where it's just here's more upgrade cards that you might not have gotten, or could we expect something kind of like a mini conversion kit of like, hey, here's some of the pilots you missed from 1.0, or I miss Tycho.
I think I'll just repeat what you said here. It's certainly a possibility, and we listen to things that fans want and that have been successful in the past.
I can say this, you will eventually be able to get new pilots for old ships without buying more miniatures.
Yes.
Quick small one. Would either one of you guys like to join our trivia team for tonight?
Are you good? Because I got a trivia rep to maintain.
What?
Us two, we were on the winning team last year.
I mean, is it Star Wars trivia?
It is.
Oh. That was going to be my get out.
Yes, sir.
Can you stack buzz droids on top of each other?
Oh,
In
that's a
X-WING?
good question.
Yeah.
I think you can.
I think
You can stack bombs, right? Yeah.
I believe you
Yeah,
could
can stack
when
them on top of
initially
each other.
launching them, but once they're in play, if they get run over, they're not going to overlap. They can't overlap anything else later. You could launch one on top of something else.
Hmm?
So if I launch two of the same ship and I attach them both to the front arc, then
You
when
can't.
they move through, they can't be on top of each other.
I don't believe you can attach both to the front arc. One would have to go on front, one would have to go on the rear. Let's see, who hasn't had a chance yet? Oh, way in the back.
That's right. Do you plan on releasing any more additional con exclusives, like a Gen Con for X-WING and stuff like that? Like because I noticed the packaging, it seemed like it was like almost like permanent for this Ultra Droid, because it has the con exclusive.
Yeah, again, we can't really talk about future releases in any real detail, but it's a possibility.
Except we did announce already that there's a Legion sculpted celebration.
Yeah, so there's an exclusive Vader miniature at Celebration, so you can extrapolate from there. The gentleman in, you.
Will there be more generals like Yoda or Count Dooku in the Clone Wars?
Heck yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, one of the really cool things and one of my favorite things about Legion is designing those iconic characters and commanders. So, we're going to keep doing this game for a very long time to come, which means eventually you will have a huge roster of characters to choose from for all factions. You said.
You're dabbling into campaign for Armada. Any crossover to your other genres of thoughts?
Are you asking whether we will do campaigns for other games?
Yes.
Or it depends. It depends on the game and it depends on the focus of that game. I would like to. Legion in particular, we are very busy just getting content out, so it probably won't happen for a while. We are planning like mission packs and terrain packs, starting with the down to ATSD. So there'll be sort of like mini narrative individual battles, and the down to ATSD has like a linked battle, so it's a 2-game sort of mini campaign. But at the moment, there's nothing in the works in terms of a larger campaign.
We're
But
really
it's something I'd
pleased
like to do.
We're really pleased with how it's worked out for Armada, though, because that game plays a little slower and you're able to get less games in just because it takes longer to play and it's a larger game. It certainly helped give a reason for those games to happen. So,
The follow-up was just because of the scenarios in 1.0 with X-WING. Those were some fun to play with, and they came with it. And they're not really coming out in 2.0, though you could play them. But.
That's gonna be a heavy feature of Epic Play. So there's definitely going to be some really exciting narrative sort of story kind of things to do with X-WING 2.0. It's definitely in the works. You, sir.
Going off of the Epic, is there any plan to release new Epic ships?
Again, we can't really talk about future products, unfortunately.
Dustin.
For X-Wing with the droids, you added some double uniques and some triple pips. Do you think we'll see anything like that in Legion?
It's a possibility. Yeah, it's a possibility, but there's less need for it in Legion because there's already a Force org chart. So essentially every Special Forces unit is kind of a 3-pip unit. So the need for that is significantly less, but it's possible that you could have, you know, a generic Jedi or something who was a 2-pip card or something like that. It's definitely something we could leave the door open for.
Whenever we come up with a good mechanic, we inevitably rob it from each other for our other games.
Yeah, I mean, we all work in the same tiny little rooms.
And on the same games.
And on the same games, so there's plenty of cross-pollination, as is pretty obvious to anybody who plays more than one of our miniatures games.
Against the wall over here.
Hyperspace recently had an increase in some ships to what was eligible, as well as we recently had news that Extended is going to be the format for Worlds. It could be interpreted that there's a direction hyperspace is going, and when it was thought to be, that was meant to be a way of balancing, because it was easier to balance less stuff. So do we see a convergence of hyperspace into Extended one day where hyperspace is no longer needed?
No. Hyperspace is going to remain a more limited pool to encourage people to explore with combinations that they normally would pass over for things they're used to flying, but that may not be in the current season's hyperspace list. Most of it will remain focused on new releases. Things like the X-Wing and the TIE Fighter are going to be available in hyperspace most, if not all of the time. But that way we can keep it accessible to new players, but still have some more different interesting things cycle through so that players can continue to experiment with new options. You have a follow-up?
It is. So when we see that one of those options released was, say, the Interceptor for the Imperial faction, but we don't see necessarily a wave release unless it is announced Wave 5 at Celebration. What is the rationale for that if you could argue that the new player has no way of getting a hold of that kind of ship?
So we're not going to completely limit that format to new releases because our new releases have a number of logistical constraints upon them. But we'll try and keep the majority of that format recent releases, or at least things that have been released in second edition. There are a number of TIE Interceptors available from first edition. I realize that's not a perfect solution, but it's also a ship people want to see on the table. So it'll be an experiment going forward, so we'll see how well it does.
Conversion kits exist for a reason.
Yes.
Well, and to follow up on that a little bit, I think, you know, in a perfect world, hyperspace format would be a limited but diverse pool of ships, and every single one of those ships would be a re-release 2.0 ship. That's not the world that we live in. We can't get enough stuff out fast enough to really achieve that.
You play the game too fast.
That's right. And the ultimate purpose of hyperspace is to be an alternative format that is new player friendly but not new player exclusive.
One last follow-up. I apologize for hogging the time. Does it mean that you can actually take stuff out of?
Yeah, it'll rotate in and out. We want to keep it vibrant. I think one of the things about 2.0 that we've already seen is that changing points values, changing strategies leads to a much more interesting game. It keeps you on your toes. You know, maybe you'll have access to Z95s one year, but next year it'll be Hawks and Jump Masters or whatever. We're just going to keep it interesting. We're trying to provide each faction in hyperspace with a limited pool of ships, but that still lets you build diverse squads.
Thank you.
So right in front of them?
Yeah, for Legion, do you think there's any chance we could see like neutral mercenary units that can play for multiple factions?
There's always a chance of that. We did not really see a huge opportunity for that with most of the iconic bounty hunters and mercenary type things that we had planned for the foreseeable future. Characters like Boba Fett are not really going to work for the Rebel Alliance, so that doesn't make any sense. Eventually, maybe there'll be enough to make their own faction, and eventually we may see characters that are a little bit more flexible in terms of who they might be allied with. But for for the beginning of the game, for the foreseeable future, most of those types of characters actually fit pretty well into a specific faction. And there are actually, other than like Hondo Onaka, I can't really think of too many truly neutral Star Wars mercenary type characters. Yes.
What's the chance we ever see Hondo?
Pretty good.
For hyperspace, you had mentioned a year rotation for X-Wing. Would you consider doing 6 months with the point rebalances, or yearly?
I don't think we have I don't think we can share with you a specific plan for hyperspace at this time. But yeah, we are very open to community feedback. I mean, one of the reasons for the changes to hyperspace in the first place is that a lot of people felt that the format was too limiting. So we listened to that, we heard those feedback notes, and we thought, okay, yeah, let's open this up a little bit. Let's add a few ships to each faction. Let's make it a slightly more interesting format. So we're very receptive to feedback, but at the same time, we don't want there to be whiplash. We don't want to make too many changes too fast. It's very important to at least give things a little time to percolate and for the community to develop some really data-based opinions about things before we do stuff like change points. So keeping it on a regular but not frantic pace of change is, I think, the ultimate goal for us.
In the back row?
With the new core box coming out for Clone Wars and Legion, I expect we'll see a lot more of very similar dials and token sets that we saw in the original core box. Is there any of those getting updated in any way? Are we going to see something like the barricades that were in the original core box? What kind of peripherals we're looking at?
Oh, good question. I believe it just contains the same barricades as the original core set. It has a lot of new upgrade cards, some new tokens, and of course a lot of new miniatures. But it is still designed to be a jumping off point. So you're going to get all of the necessities. You're going to get enough aim and dodge and wounds and suppression. There's a new 3 suppression token because of all of the mechanics that we have introduced in recent waves that lay down a lot of suppression. And then the other thing that we're doing with the new core set is we are trying to introduce new players to these factions specifically. So there is a new Learn to Play that focuses specifically on the new factions and contains the new factions rules rather than the Rebel and Imperial Learn to Play. So there's a new, fully refreshed, newly laid out Learn to Play for the new core set.
On the aisle here?
The X-Wing app, is there anything in the works to make it either more user-friendly and or leverage the fact that it's an app, electronic submission, being able to tie it into these events, be able to get your pairing by looking at your phone rather than 200 people cramming to a board with paper?
It will continue to develop and improve.
Can you make any comment on when we might see new battle cards for Legion, if and when?
Yeah, that's a great question. Along with the new core set, there will be shortly thereafter an injection of new battle cards. There are no new battle cards in the core set. I want to clarify that because we don't want people to have to buy it just to get necessities. It's very important for us to make sure that Rebel and Imperial players don't feel compelled to purchase outside of their factions if they don't want to. But you should, because the Clone Wars is sweet. So yeah, there will be more of those. That's one of the main design philosophies of the game, to keep it interesting, is to keep those coming. So let's see, in the back, I think we haven't heard from you yet.
I know it wasn't on the agenda for today, but could you share with us any update on Imperial Assault again?
I actually do not work on Imperial Assault, so I have no information for you, I'm afraid.
Nothing at all?
No, I'm sorry, I have no idea.
Over here.
I don't know if you guys are allowed, it's a bit of a silly question on the resistance transport. Would it be reasonable in let's say the tournament setting, it's always expected to be you have to have, the FFG model, that if we were wanting to, in a list, run the escape pod and the transport separately, could we cheap out and buy one expansion, have that be 2 ships, or is it kind of a...
It only comes with one base and stand. There are different dials, so it comes with a dial for each. that in a local event that's on the TO, it would be an incomplete miniature.
Okay.
So.
base, right?
Yeah, but there's no separate pod. Yeah.
Honestly, you could probably make that happen without too many issues.
They also fill somewhat different roles, so you may, if you have the resistance transport, that is going to be able to do most of what you want. The pod is sort of a budget version. It doesn't have as much crew capacity, more limited pilot options. In front of them.
With, you have a tournament organizer now that is using more mobile apps. Do you see more data collection on your end now that they're also going more digital? Does that affect decisions with points updates for XWING or any sort of changes you see in Legion or ARMADA or stuff like that?
We pay attention to what fan feedback is and playtester feedback is for XWING because it is an ongoing points playtest group. And data is usually more useful than just people's opinions. So we do occasionally look at fan collected data sources. We don't have a drastic data collection system ourselves, but we do get some feedback from tournament organizers directly to us. And that often includes lists and placements and such.
And I will say that we have been working on new tournament software, and that will hopefully allow us to do more interesting and innovative things in terms of data collection. Once a product is released for XWING, for example, or a product has been out for a while, we really do pay attention to the tournaments that happen and the lists that are placing well, and not just lists that are placing well, but we also look for things like what ships aren't we seeing in any lists. Those are really good indicators that those need some work. And if we're seeing a ship just ubiquitously, we're seeing way too much of it, that's a pretty good indication to us that that ship can probably get curbed a little bit. So yeah, we are definitely collecting data from all different sources, and that informs a huge part of our adjustment philosophy.
So that being said, competitive metas are sometimes subject to a little bit of groupthink, and so there are a number of people playing our games just in their homes, with their friends, at local stores, not doing major events, and so we don't want to change things too fast or make them too complex that everybody else can't pick up the game as well. So.
Just one follow-up. If you had to pick one unit or one pack or whatever for every major event this weekend, Legion, ARMADA, what is the one of each that you expect to see a whole bunch of?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I mean, Legion's easy because I can just say stormtroopers, but yes. I expect to see a lot of Veers and Boba Fett. I expect to see a lot of Luke. I'll say Luke. Luke is going to be everywhere. He's really, really good. He fills a lot of gaps in the Rebel roster. He's just such a multi-tool. So I'm going to say Luke for Legion. I'll let you field the...
I cheated. I've already walked around the ARMADA tables, Imperial Star Destroyers.
That's a no-brainer.
I mean, it's the Imperial Star Destroyer. What are you going to do?
What do you think for X-Wing? I think X-Wing is the open question. X-Wing's obviously. I think we're going to see a lot of RC2s.
It's on the name of the box.
Yeah. Such a good ship.
It is. They both are. All right, in the back row.
Yes, I have a question about units in Legion that may be cross-faction. Like, for example, in the Rebels right now, they have the Wookiee Warriors. Is there a chance that we would see that same unit appear in the Clone Wars as like a separate unit card or something like that?
Yeah, that's a possibility. It would depend on whether we wanted to do a resculpt at some point. So it would depend on a lot of circumstances, but yeah, I mean, certainly the ATRT originated in the Clone Wars, so that would make perfect sense in the Republic faction. Yeah, eventually there will certainly be some crossover in some way.
And one reason we don't have that happen more often across all of our games is we try to keep a certain thematic cohesiveness to each faction. So even though for X-Wing in particular, because it's all just equipment that can be used by anyone, so you'll have individual stories where Rebels fly TIEs or Imperials steal X-Wings or whatever, but if a character or a ship or a vehicle is recognized as primarily being used by a certain faction from what you see on screen, that is more likely to be the faction that will be in. And then right in front of him.
Sure.
The Tauntauns that have been previewed for Legion look pretty good on paper. Can you tell us anything about how creature troopers will work?
Sure. They are a new type of unit. Much like emplacement troopers, they have their own little subset of rules that modify the general trooper rules. Off the top of my head, they can't claim things the way that normal troopers can, so they can't run around and pick up crates. I don't believe they gain benefits, they don't gain cover benefits from suppression, so that's a big balancing factor in terms of the durability of the Tauntauns, for example. They can be panicked, but they won't benefit from suppression. And then there are various special rules when it comes to engagement, but I will leave those alone for now, because I would rather just wait for preview articles and stuff to go into that.
Cool.
Right here?
With X-Wing moving into more faction-based like playing, so you only have to buy one, would it be a potential to have a new core set, so that way you wouldn't have to get a TIE Fighter and X-Wing if you only want to play Clone Wars era?
It's a possibility. Having the single point of entry has been a big selling point for the game, though. So it's a possibility, depending on the feedback we get. However, once you have a core set, or if you are able to get the components separately, we sell many of the components separately. And now that we actually have in Wave 4 premium templates as well, that will cover most of your bases. So it would be possible to get into the game without the core set. It is still a little difficult right now. It would be nice to make that easier.
Yeah, that's something that I personally would like to see. So without saying anything about possible future plans, it's something that we are aware of. Be nice to be able to get into the new factions without having to buy into Rebels or Imperials.
We're running short on time, so if we just have a couple more questions.
Sure.
So we'll do these three.
Yeah, in X-Wing you have a really good coverage of most of the iconic characters, but where is Ben Kenobi?
Where is Ben Kenobi?
That's a good question. He's on Tatooine.
He disables power beams.
That wasn't the character I was expecting you to ask about.
Yoda.
Over here.
You've got the colored bases from the old X-Wing. Is there any plan to re-release the colored bases so they would include medium?
I do not know what the status of colored bases is.
And then back there.
With Sabine being announced, is there a possibility for the Rebel crew to be a unique unit together?
I mean, definitely that is anything from newer canonical sources is fair game. So yeah, I think it's entirely possible that we'll get Kanan and Hera and Ezra at some point. We try to spread out our attention a little bit so that we don't focus too heavily on any one thing, with the exception of like the films, which we try to draw from first and foremost. So yeah, no, pretty much any recognizable canonical character you can name is a very valid possibility to show up in Legion at some point.
And then my follow-up, if they do come out, would there be a possibility for them to be a unique unit together, as far as instead of being separate?
It's a possibility. That might be tricky to design, but I mean, I'm never going to close the door on any sort of mechanics or anything like that. It's possible we'll see duo units in the future, like R2 and D2 and 3PO in one unit, or Baze and Chirrut. Like the great thing about Star Wars is there's so much content out there that we can really kind of shape our designs to what we have seen and what we know about these characters. So yeah, anything is possible.
It's a great setting. We want to draw from as much of it as we can. Characters from novels and comics and movies and books and video games. All right, last chance.
Give saber throw.
In the back, against the wall there.
For X-Wing tournament organized play, you have the tournament sheets are for 1.0. Is there a possible chance that they would be updated for 2.0 now that the gas costs have been announced?
Yeah, those will get an update. And that's a quick one, so we'll do one more.
Any idea when Worlds is?
Nope. One more. You, sir.
Dr. Aphra in any of the miniature games.
I would love to see a Dr. Afro figure. That's all I can say.
It's a recognizable
awesome.
character. It's a possibility.
Yep, she's super cool.
All right, thank you all very much for coming and being with us.
Now go forth and be married.
Where's it?